Hey gang, going through and having a little problems with these faucets, so I figured we'd go through and show you how to rebuild these faucets. Normally a faucet like this costs about $350. Rebuilding it costs about $50. As you can see, we have a problem with a drip, and also when we are running, the sprayer does not disengage all the way. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the parts in this faucet that need to be replaced to fix those problems. Always when you're working on something with water, make sure you turn off your valves. As you can see, most faucets are going to have a valve like this under it unless your house is very old. Then you may have to shut off the main source of water to the house. That's your hot, that's your cold. And that should take care of it. All right. So, the big thing you'll have to remember when you're doing this is you are going to lose some water when you pull the spout off and you pull the stems off. So, all right. This will be the tools you'll need. This is a Delta faucet. All faucets are going to be different, but most Delta 2-handle faucets are set up this way. You'll need these stems, either the 10HC or the 16HC. You'll need O-rings for the spout, and that would be right up in this area. You'll need some heat-proof grease. And you will also need this diverter for the sprayer. Tools you'll need for the Delta, usually the set screws on them are a 3/32 Allen wrench. You'll need a pair of pliers or an adjustable wrench. And you may possibly need a Phillips screwdriver, may not. It depends on what is actually in the stem, if you have extensions or if you just have the stem. So we'll go ahead and get started on the hot side. It is easier to pull these handles off like this to where you can actually get to the Allen wrench in case your system's short. But this hole is right there. And you stick it in there and you undo the screw. I like to pull them all the way out and set them aside. And that's what your little set screw for the handle looks like. Sometimes they may stick on you. You may have to rock them a little bit to get them to come loose, but then they come on off. All right, so what you're looking at here, this is the stems. So this is what you're replacing. It's this part right here. So what you want to do, and like I said, you are going to lose water because you got water that's sitting in this entire spout. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on this, just enough to grip it and pull. And it usually will come off pretty easy. A lot of times with these Deltas, you can rock them back and forth a few times and they'll usually come right on up. And there you go. And that's the water I was telling you you'd lose. As you can see on this stem, is basically just a stem. It's just a barrel that turns. So it just turns that entire system. And it sets against what's called a cup washer. And the cup washer is usually where your problem comes in. Either the spring underneath the cup washer or the cup washer itself is worn. But that's the old stem. So we get it cold out. That's also the same setup, it's just cold. All right, then you can use your Allen wrench, or if you have an angled pick, reach in there all the way down in the stem. You'll see this sits down into a little seat inside, and that is your cup washer and your spring. The cup washer is just rubber. You see how it's inverted here for the spring to set into it. So that's how everything sets in there. There's the one out of the cold side. Same thing, this one's actually stuck, so this is probably where my leak was coming from. That's the cup washer. Yep, it's got a crack right there. If you can see it, I don't know if it'll focus in on it enough, but right at my thumbnail there's a crack. All right, so then you want to just double check, make sure there's nothing inside of there. You'll need something to cut it open with too. So here's the new stem. And get the cup washer out of the inside of it. It's sitting in there from packaging, I guess. There's the new stem, the new cup washer, and the new spring. Now, usually to set these in, they're a little tricky. So what I usually do is take and stick it on here and hold it up, and drop my Allen wrench into the center of the hole, and then drop the cup washer down on it. You can usually take that and then push it down with your finger and get it to seat into the hole. And you got to make sure it's seated level. Sometimes I go in there a little crooked. You got to make sure you get that straight in there. There we go. Now, another important thing you're going to want to do is take heat-proof grease or waterproof grease and put a little bit of that on the bottom of the stem. That's what actually reduces your friction and allows it to move. You don't need a lot, just get it on there, and it also helps to take and put some on the O-ring around the stem so it'll seat in there properly. And you just take the stem, drop it back into the grooves. They got grooves on the sides, so everything will just drop right on into place. And then you get it set right first. And they go opposite ways, so one can you can turn it. It'll either open like this or it'll open like this. So then you get that on there. Get your nut pulled down. And the O-ring is what makes the seal, so you don't have to crank this tight. You just want to get it snug to where it won't back out. Okay. Let's get this one cut open and in there. Okay. Here's your O-ring, new O-ring, and then the spring is actually sitting inside the stem. We'll just repeat the same process on the cold. And once again, make sure it is seated in there all the way or you'll have a leak still. Okay, and then take your stem, put a little bit of the grease on it. And seat it on in there. Make sure I've got it in there right. And you just put the nut on there and snug it down again. All right. So That takes care of your stem replacement. And then on your handles, you just repeat the process going back. On there. Get on there. Put your set screw back in. Show you on this one here. See the little hole? You slide your screw in. This is another one of them ones you don't want to crank it down too hard. You just want to get it in there and seated good to where it holds. All right. And put your handles back on. And all the handles are is a grooved end, long bolt with a grooved end, and the groove seats into these, this spline seats into this spline. So as you go through, and it's got a receiving thread in the back end. They also have other handles that'll screw into the larger threads that are all one piece, so you don't have the two pieces. That's that. Okay, now for the diverter for the sprayer. This is a pretty simple setup. You basically slide this sleeve up, which actually sits in a little pointed groove in the back. You slide the sleeve up and out of the way. And then you take this, is just a piece that sits around the base of it, and it's got a groove. You can see that groove right there, this right here. It sits into the slots on the sides of the spout itself. And that actually holds the spout from coming up, but still lets you swivel. So there's actually no mechanical fastener here other than this little plastic piece right here is what holds everything down. So this is your diverter. Just sits back up in this plastic piece right here, and what it is the water is always trying to be diverted to the sprayer. So it's just coming out of your spout, the water is always trying to divert to your sprayer, but your sprayer won't allow the water until you actually hit the handle. Okay, so as it turns out, our diverter is actually okay. There's no actual problem with the diverter. The rubber is good on it. Everything's fine on it. It's seating properly. Our actual problem is the plastic seat that this sits against. As you can see inside there, there's wear mark. It's not really a wear mark. It's about 1/4 of an inch from the base of that plastic. That's actually where that plastic piece is supposed to be. And this seats against it. And as the water's pushing, it's always being pushed here, so it's always diverting to the spout, to the sprayer, which goes down into the faucet. And then when you open up the faucet, it actually pushes back and goes down. Well, with that not being able to seat properly between the spout and the base of the faucet, this is just kind of hanging in there and moving around, so it's actually not diverting completely. It is still diverting half of the water, it's just not diverting completely. Now the only fix for that is if you could get that out, which I tried and I cannot, or replace the spout. We've decided that we can live with it because the sprayer does still work, it just doesn't divert all of the water. So we're just going to live with it the way it is. So we're going to go ahead and leave this diverter in place. And it does seat down in there, just so you know, it just kind of seats into a groove. We are still going to go ahead and change these O-rings out. So to change these O-rings, the easiest tool to use would be a pick. You can get the pick up in there and get up under it, and then pull it around. That's one. Now this one you'll have to work all the way up the body, so you'll have to pick it a couple of times. There's two. Now, I said earlier that this was the O-rings that you would need. I was incorrect. These are actually O-rings for a single lever faucet, which the body of a single lever faucet is a little bit larger than that one. So I did have to go back and get the correct O-rings. Now, this is the correct size O-rings for it. They do normally come in a kit similar to that one, but they were out of them. So I just had to match the O-ring up to it. And then putting the O-rings back, you just put the first one up on the top. That way it kind of sits there, and you roll the next one down past it and seat it back down in the groove. And that way you got them. Now, this is another place where you want to use heat-proof grease or waterproof grease and get on that O-ring. You're also going to want to take and dry the inside of this and put grease inside of this also. Alright. Then you just work this thing back on there. Alright. You set your plastic clip. Like I said, you got the grooves. And another thing you can see on this, that little spot right there is actually where this little dimple in the chrome is basically just a beauty ring. Will clip into place to where it doesn't slide up after you have everything in place. You just get this in here and work it around. There you go, everything works. Okay, you slide this discussion back on. And like I said, if you can turn the faucet around, you can see where it just kind of clips down into that. And it sits in there. All right. Put the aerator back in. Okay, now it's time to turn the water back on and test everything out. After you turn your water on, you want to double check, come back and double check after you test everything up top and make sure you don't have any leaks. A lot of the times the packing, which is usually on the newer faucets, just a flat washer, will leak. So you just got to double check that and maybe tighten up those nuts behind the handles. But let's see how we did. Like everything works. And this is our sprayer, how the sprayer works. It's still doing the same things that we were doing before. We still have plenty of pressure, but it's just not how it should be. So that's why we decided to go ahead and live with it. But that is the repair on a typical two-handle Delta faucet. Most lavatory faucets will be the same way. If it's a two-handle, it'll have the same stems. This is the same kind of setup. So the only difference is most of the lavatory faucets stem for the O-rings for the spout will either be fixed, so you won't have O-rings, or if it'll probably be a smaller size. But that's it, and that's how you take care of your faucet. Okay, and then you want to check for leaks. As you can see, I have no water coming out. With this right here is where you would have a leak at. If you would have a leak, it would be right here. Now, if you have to jostle your fittings around, that's the T that, this is the hot side, so that's the T that goes over to the dishwasher. Double check that kind of stuff while you're under here if you have to move a lot of stuff around. But that point right there is usually where you're looking to see if you have any leaks. Everything looks good. And that's it.
Thank y'all for watching, and I hope y'all enjoyed learning how to fix your leaky faucet. Have a great day.